Greetings my fellow freaks and weirdos, I'm Tom and welcome to Monster Gab, where we love to talk about classic and vintage horror. Now normally on this channel we tend to talk about horror films, but in this case I really do want to talk about this wonderful collection of poems and stories by Edgar Allan Poe. Now I'm not sponsored by the people who published this book, but rather than the stories and poems themselves, it is actually the book that I want to talk about, just because it's so aesthetically beautiful. Now, when it comes to recognising some of the world's greatest writers in history, it's easy to think of the likes of Shakespeare or Wordsworth, but when it comes to the macabre and eerie ghost stories, no one quite fits the bill as much as Edgar Allan Poe, especially as he's recognised as one of the greatest writers in American history. So I'm sure you're all kind of familiar with the fact that this guy wrote some very kind of dark literature. But let's put things into perspective. I'm pretty sure that most of you who are watching this channel are into some kind of horror. It's always kind of been there. Human beings have always been kind of interested in either the paranormal or, monsters or, Satanism. Things that other people kind of consider evil and dark, and we shouldn't be into all that kind of stuff. People tend to accept it a little more nowadays. I mean, just because we're into that kind of stuff doesn't mean that we're that way inclined. Well, not all of us. I hope we haven't got many serial killers here on this channel. But if we go back into, say, medieval times, where the interest was always there, the topics of Satanism or, devil worship or paganism or whatever, but if you ever brought it up, you were probably considered a witch, and the likeliness is you were killed for it. And there'd be two reasons for that. The poor education of the fact that just because you're talking about it doesn't mean that you're that way inclined, and the fact that there wasn't really that much to do back then, and killing someone or dunking them in water was a form of entertainment. But then if you fast forward to say like the 18th century or like the Victorian era, the times where Edgar Allan Poe was alive, you weren't going to get executed for having the kind of mindset of being interested in the macabre or ghosts or the paranormal, but it was still fairly taboo, and because of that it kind of formed a trend as well. And bear in mind, there still wasn't really much else to do, so this was something that really kind of, tickled the brain, if you like. People were holding seances, people were really getting into it and believing it as well. And I'm not saying it's right or wrong to believe in such a thing, you're entitled to your own opinion, but back then, like I said, there wasn't much else to do. It really did kind of form a trend, and it was just the best time to release this kind of material. It's no wonder that during that time his stories and poems really did cotton on. His most famous stories and poems definitely have some kind of somber darkness, and it's possible that his inspiration was from his own life. After all, it appeared that he had quite a tragic lifestyle, right from his childhood all the way up to his early death. There is actually a wonderful biography in the beginning of this book which explains a lot of the tragedies that occurred in Poe's life, and it does kind of make you reflect on how sad the man must have been. I'm not going to go into all of that right now. I mean, if you are interested, I'm sure you can read about it online, but the fact is that this man could not have been happy throughout his life. Despite all of that, and not that we should praise it, but what came from his life was some of the best literature ever written. I'm sure many of you are familiar with his literature, and if you're not, then absolutely check it out. I mean, he's written some of the most amazing kind of macabre stories, ghost stories, poems. A lot of them have been adapted into movies as well, some of the best horror movies ever made. And it goes without saying that the man was just a great wordsmith as well, absolutely brilliant with his words and phrasing, and his poems were just unbelievable. With the likes of stories like The Raven, The Fall of the House of Usher, The Black Cat, all the big ones or whatever. The beauty of this book actually is the fact that it's not a complete collection, but I would say it's a best of or a greatest hits. It's definitely a massive collection, and I'm still reading it. I haven't got through it all yet, but all of the big hitters are in here. So let's talk about the book then. Well, first of all, like I said, it's aesthetically beautiful. I absolutely adore the kind of gothic design on the front and back of this book. It's a nice big solid hard book as well. I mean, you could kill a man with this thing, it's so heavy. It's got beautiful gold-edged pages on it that just kind of glisten in the light, with kind of threaded bookmarks in it. It's just an absolute delight. I mean, amongst all of the other books in my collection, this one really does stand out like a sore thumb, but I adore it so much. Funny enough, I was looking at this on Amazon on my phone one night. I'd had a few beers, and you know when you do that dangerous thing when you've had a few drinks and you start shopping online, it's a dangerous thing to do. As it happened, I was only kind of looking at this thing. I had no intent to buy it at the time, but my wife kind of caught eye at what I was doing, and she treated me to this. She actually bought it, and a few days later she just handed it to me and went, "There you are, you were looking at that the other night, could tell you wanted it." And she was right, actually. I really did. Because again, not so much just because of the collection, it's a great collection, but the fact that it just looks amazing. Well, I think so anyway. I just think it's a beautiful looking book. But yeah, that's pretty much all I have to say, really. Like I said, I'm just kind of showing it off. I really appreciate the fact that my wife treated me to this book, and I look forward to reading more of it. So guys, are you familiar with Edgar Allan Poe? What is your favourite story or poem by this amazing American writer? Who is your favourite horror-based novelist? Maybe it's Stephen King, someone a bit more recent and up to date. Let me know in the comments section. And until next time, I don't know who they are, but if you don't subscribe, they will get you. So make sure you subscribe, click that notification bell so you don't miss out on any new video that I post here on Monster Gab. Make sure you like this video, leave a comment and share this with your friends. And I thank you so much for stopping by. Take care, folks. See you soon.